It just is a different thing to do. I don't think you can say if it's smart or if it's not smart. What can the captain do in the end? But he has to create the right environment. He has to get the guys to bond and out-prepare the other team. And you just hope you have the best players. But beyond that, what more can Keegan do? He'll have to have great assistants around him. And that's going to be the key.
Paul Azinger just called out Keegan Bradley, and what he said about Keegan Bradley's captaincy has the entire golf world divided. What happened next stunned players, fans, and analysts alike, and today, I'll reveal why this moment could redefine American golf forever. And first, let's rewind to the spark that started it all. Doubt ignited. The summer of 2025 should have been a victory lap for American golf. The Ryder Cup finally returning to U.S. soil at the beastly Bethpage Black, with Keegan Bradley poised as the fresh, fiery face of a new generation. But then, Paul Azinger happened. The 65-year-old ex-captain, forever etched in Ryder Cup lore as the man who engineered America's last real resurrection in 2008, decided to torch the calm before the storm. His verdict? The PGA of America had made a guilt pick. His words, not ours. "I love Keegan, he's my bud, but it's a little early for Keegan," he quipped to the Golfer's Journal, detonating a controversy before the first tee shot was even imagined. To Azinger, this wasn't about personalities, it was about principles. The Ryder Cup, he warned, wasn't a place for sentimental redemption arcs. It was war.
Mistake by the PGA of America. I think Keegan, I love Keegan, he's my bud, but it's a little early for Keegan. I think it was like a guilt pick. And there's guys out there that deserve to be captain. Justin Leonard, for one. Stuart Sink, I think, deserves it. They've played Ryder Cups and major title holders and all that. They kind of jumped them. They jumped a couple guys. David Toms, for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Won the PGA.
Azinger's issue wasn't that Bradley couldn't captain. It was that he shouldn't yet. He was still too close to the fire, too competitive to lead from the sidelines. The PGA's decision, Azinger suggested, was more therapy session than strategy. A desperate apology to a player wronged by Zach Johnson's 2023 snub in Rome. And in Azinger's gospel, that's sin. Captains should be battle-hardened generals, not active soldiers. "You can't fight while holding the clipboard," he might as well have said. The subtext was brutal. Keegan Bradley was being set up to fail by the very organization meant to protect him. As practice rounds began at Bethpage, Azinger doubled down on every network that would have him. He warned Bradley that Bethpage was no one's home course, even for an American captain. "I really don't like Bethpage Black," he said bluntly on Straight Facts Homie. "It's awkward. Downhill tee shots, blind landings, a place where flukes happen. And the New York crowd?" He practically begged Bradley to charm them before the cup turned ugly. "Win the crowd early," he urged, "because if you don't, they'll eat you alive." To some, Azinger's words sounded like tough love. To others, sabotage disguised as mentorship. After all, this was a man whose own captaincy was once doubted, whose pod system had been dismissed before it revolutionized team chemistry. Yet, there he was again, warning from the shadows as history prepared to repeat itself. And when the final scoreboard read, Europe 15, USA 13, every syllable of his skepticism became prophecy. But the real question lingered like smoke over Bethpage's black fairways. Was Azinger right? Or did his shadow help darken Bradley's chance at glory? Like and subscribe, because this feud between mentor and protege was just getting started. Before we understand Azinger's explosion in 2025, you've got to know the man behind the microphone, the one forged not in luxury, but in mud and battle scars. Warrior forged. Long before the microphones, before the punditry, before the clipped critiques on Golf Channel, Paul Azinger was a grinder. Not the kind of player you'd see smirking in tailored polos on glossy magazine covers. Azinger was built from the grit of Bradenton, Florida. His Ryder Cup story didn't begin with champagne or victory laps. It began in the mud. The year was 1989, the Belfry, and the Americans were still pretending they owned the cup. Europe, brash, young, and unafraid, had other plans. Azinger's debut ended in disappointment, but the seed was planted.
Won the PGA. You can't turn your back on those guys. That was the whole thing about the PGA of America. And used to be you had to win the PGA championship to be a captain. That's kind of how it was. Then it gradually changed, and then it gradually, you don't have to win a major.
By 1991, at Kiowa Island, the Ryder Cup wasn't golf anymore. It was trench warfare. War by the Shore, they called it. And Azinger, teamed with Hale Irwin, became part of its myth. His battle with Sevo Ballesteros in the singles that year remains the stuff of legend. An icy handshake, unspoken contempt, a one-up victory that cracked Europe's armor and made Azinger a folk hero. "That was when I fell in love with it," he later said, his voice still thick with the salt of South Carolina air. The cup had found its soldier. From 1989 to 1997, Azinger played 4 cups, amassing a record that was neither spectacular nor shameful, 583, but every number told a war story. At the Belfry in 93, he grinded through rain and rivalry, and at Valderrama in 97, he bled metaphorically in defeat. These weren't stats, they were scars. Behind the numbers was a man who came to see the Ryder Cup as a covenant, something sacred, something worth breaking for. When cancer came for him in the mid-90s, it didn't erase the fighter, it refined him. His comeback in 1995 wasn't just about golf, it was about survival, and in that survival, he found the secret that later defined his leadership: unity through adversity. "We don't win because we're better," he told a friend once. "We win because we trust." That mantra, born in hospital rooms and bunker dust, would become the backbone of his 2008 miracle. By the time 2025 rolled around, Azinger's Ryder Cup bond wasn't nostalgic, it was spiritual. Watching Bradley's team unravel, he wasn't ranting, he was reliving. Every missed putt, every fractured pairing, every stunned face on Sunday, they were ghosts of Valderrama whispering again. Paul Azinger wasn't criticizing Keegan Bradley, he was warning him. The Ryder Cup doesn't forgive the unprepared. From soldier to strategist, Azinger didn't just play the game, he rewired it. And the secret weapon that once saved America's pride? It had 3 letters and 1 mission. POD, Pod Profit. The legend of Paul Azinger didn't peak on a tee box. It was born in a boardroom. When the PGA named him 2008 captain, America was desperate, humiliated, fragmented, exhausted from losing 5 of the last 6 cups. Azinger responded not with pep talks, but with a plan that sounded closer to a Navy SEAL briefing than a golf strategy session. Pods, he said. 3 groups of 4, designed for chemistry, not convenience. It was psychological warfare wrapped in golf etiquette, and it worked. The 2008 Ryder Cup at Valhalla became his masterpiece. The pod system created micro-teams that bonded like families. They practiced together, ate together, competed together. "You can't fake chemistry," Azinger told Golf Pass years later, half smiling like a man who'd cracked a secret code. His players weren't just teammates, they were tribes. Each pod knew its mission, its strengths, and, most importantly, its trust circle. When Europe surged late, Azinger didn't panic, he pivoted. By Sunday, the Americans had bulldozed their way to a 16.5-11.5 victory, the country's first in nearly a decade. It wasn't charisma that won it, it was construction. Azinger had studied Navy SEAL unit dynamics, learning that small, bonded teams outperformed large, uncoordinated groups. He translated that wisdom into golf's most cutthroat event. No ad-libbing, no ego-stroking. Just order in the chaos. His players adored him for it. Phil Mickelson, Anthony Kim, Stuart Sink, all credited Azinger with giving them clarity and control. But here's where the irony twists. In 2025, those same methods were what Keegan Bradley ignored. Azinger had practically handed him the blueprint: pre-vetted pairings, emotional cohesion, trust as the currency of competition. Yet the Bethpage team looked like 12 strangers at a company retreat. "No pods, no plan," Azinger growled in a podcast afterward. "We had a system, we had structure, we threw it away." For Azinger, the pod wasn't just a strategy, it was a legacy. Watching 2025's chaos unfold, he wasn't mourning a loss. He was mourning the death of his creation. The very foundation he laid at Valhalla had crumbled under Bradley's modern analytics and data-driven pairings. For the golf world, it was just another defeat. For Azinger, it was betrayal. And if you thought Azinger's story ended with victory laps and handshakes, think again. Because when Keegan Bradley took the captain's seat, the old general came calling, with warnings no one wanted to hear. Mentor's warning. Before the first swing at Bethpage, before the crowd's thunder, Azinger tried, really tried, to play the mentor. He'd text Keegan Bradley advice, offer small tactical nudges, even sprinkle in fatherly encouragement. Their bond went back years. The fiery young Bradley had idolized Azinger's 2008 captaincy, once calling him the smartest captain ever. Now, the idol had become the conscience-whispering warnings from the sidelines.
They just didn't need to pick him yet. I texted Keegan long before they asked him to be captain about taking the high road after he didn't get picked. I wrote him a long note, texted it this day and age. And I congratulated him and I told him, you will be the captain. One day, you will be a captain one day. And way to take the high road. But then all of a sudden, he's the captain that fast. They don't ask past captains either, by the way.
But Azinger didn't mince words. He told Bradley that Europe's preparation was surgical. Luke Donald's squad had been training in 3-hole bursts for months. They're practicing rhythm, not reps, he said. He warned about the crowd, how Bethpage's fans, feral and fickle, could turn from patriots to hecklers if the team stumbled. Win them early, or they'll devour you, he texted, half joking, half dead serious. And perhaps most importantly, he forbade resting stars. Absolutely not, he replied in bold when Bradley asked about benching Scheffler on Friday morning. You win the cup on day 1, or you lose it. Bradley, the eternal optimist, took some of it to heart. He leaned into team dinners, ramped up practice rounds, and even referenced the pod system in early interviews. But when the actual cup began, those words evaporated under pressure. Azinger, watching from his analyst's perch, could only grimace as his prophecies unfolded in real time. The crowd turned restless, the pairings collapsed, and the Americans looked lost before the first sunset. To outsiders, Azinger's criticism sounded harsh, maybe even petty. But to insiders, it was heartbreak. He saw in Bradley a version of himself, the passionate player trying to lead a team that didn't yet trust him. It wasn't condescension, it was projection. Azinger had lived this pain, and now he was watching it unfold again, only worse, televised in high definition. Keegan's got the fire, Azinger admitted later, but fire without direction burns everything down. In those words lay the essence of their tragedy. A mentor who saw too much of himself in his student, and a protege too proud to follow the script. But then came Bethpage, the battlefield that was supposed to crown a hero and instead exposed every crack. What happened next wasn't just defeat, it was prophecy fulfilled. Bethpage breakdown. Bethpage Black wasn't supposed to break Keegan Bradley. It was supposed to crown him, the homegrown captain reclaiming American pride in front of a ferocious New York gallery. Instead, it became his undoing. From the first morning, disaster loomed. The Americans, hyped and heavy with expectations, were routed 4-0 in the opening foursomes, the worst possible start, the one Azinger had screamed about for months.
It did. I think it's okay, though. I think it's really fun because now you got a guy that, I'll make everything good. Because now you got a guy that can possibly make the team and be the captain. Epic. Got to watch it.
Yeah.
The course itself was merciless. Bethpage's rough swallowed drives whole. Its greens punished hesitation. The Americans, armed with power but lacking chemistry, looked like strangers. Colin Morikawa and Harris English got steamrolled 6-4 by Rahm and Hatton. Even Scheffler, the golden boy, found himself paired awkwardly with short hitter Russell Henley, their styles clashing like cymbals in a quiet church. The scoreboard turned blue, the crowd turned tense, and by Saturday morning, even the US chants felt strained. Yet, for a fleeting moment, there was life. Saturday's 4 balls saw sparks, Scheffler's eagles, Schauffele's swagger, the crowd roaring back to life. But it wasn't enough. By Sunday, Europe's machine, precise, methodical, eerily calm, finished the job. McIlroy dismantled Burns. Hovland humiliated Fowler. Bradley's eyes in the post-match press conference told the whole story. Shock, fatigue, and the hollow stare of someone realizing the mountain he'd been asked to climb was built from his own team's mistakes. Paul Azinger, predictably, didn't hold back. I told him, he sighed on air. I told him the first morning decides everything. To the audience, it sounded smug. To those who knew, it sounded like mourning. Because Azinger wasn't just criticizing a failed captain. He was watching a torch passed, dropped, and burned. Bethpage's loss wasn't about missed putts or bad luck. It was about an American system addicted to reinvention, yet allergic to wisdom. And in the ruins of that weekend, as Bradley called it, the toughest time of my life, One truth echoed louder than any crowd. Paul Azinger had been right all along. And as if the loss wasn't enough, Azinger wasn't done talking. The next grenade he pulled came with 3 explosive letters, LIV, and it blew open the ugliest truth in modern golf. LIV fallout. When the dust settled, the blame game began, and Azinger didn't hesitate to point his finger at golf's dirtiest secret: live golf. If you're going to dip in, he thundered on subpar, then dip deep, or don't dip at all. His argument was simple, savage, and, annoyingly, accurate. Bradley had picked Bryson DeChambeau, the lone lively presence, based on merit. But he stopped there. No Koepka, no Reed, no DJ. To Azinger, that half measure killed America's edge before the cup even started. He was unapologetic. You're telling me Brooks Koepka, the guy who won at Bethpage in 2019, doesn't make your team? That's malpractice. He went further, naming Patrick Reed, the Captain America of old, and Dustin Johnson, the unflappable Iron Master. Europe picked Rahm and Hatton, he snapped. They embraced it. We ran from it. It wasn't just about names. It was about what those names symbolized: toughness, experience, and chaos. The very ingredients the Ryder Cup feeds on. Instead, Bradley's roster tilted young, safe, polite, 4 rookies who looked terrified under the New York glare. Azinger's fury wasn't elitism, it was exasperation. In 2008, he'd handpicked guys like Perry and Stricker not because they were flashy, but because they were fighters. He'd trusted chemistry over numbers. Bradley, he felt, had done the opposite, and paid for it. Post-event, Azinger's live sermon went viral. Golf Twitter called it boomer rage. But it resonated because it was honest. He wasn't shilling for live, he was pleading for realism. If Europe can weaponize their defectors, he barked, why can't we? In his mind, patriotism wasn't purity, it was pragmatism. You field your 12 best warriors, no matter the tour they play on. For Bradley, it was a wound reopened. For Azinger, it was validation. Another painful reminder that his voice, once dismissed as old school, still knew exactly how America lost the cup. Tactical chaos. When Paul Azinger dissected the 2025 Ryder Cup, he didn't start with emotion, he started with the autopsy. Friday morning, he said flatly, was the death blow. His analysis was cold, brutal, and forensic. You can't win what you lose on the first morning. He had receipts. He showed pairings that defied logic. Morikawa and English, a duo with 0 prior chemistry. Scheffler and Henley, a mismatch in distance and rhythm. It's like putting 2 lead singers on one mic, Azinger quipped. No harmony, just noise. Europe's strategy, he noted, was the opposite. Synergy and analytics aligned. Rahm and Hatton bombed fairways in sync, their power complementing precision. Meanwhile, the Americans looked like they'd met at the airport. Azinger, the self-anointed podfather, saw Bradley's team as a case study in disarray. No pods, no premeditated order, no plan. His 2008 team had come out with deliberate pairings, each pod knowing its role. Bradley's? They threw darts, Azinger sneered. You could see it on their faces, confusion masquerading as confidence. When asked if he felt sorry for Bradley, Azinger hesitated. Yeah, he said quietly. He was put in an impossible spot. But empathy didn't blunt the truth. Every tactical blunder, from rest rotations to mismatched foursomes, echoed the same fatal flaw: no foundation. Azinger's system had been built on structure, not vibes. Bradley's team had plenty of the latter, none of the former. To the public, Azinger's critiques bordered on obsessive. To the insiders, they were gospel. His infamous text, "Absolutely not," in response to benching stars, became a meme. But behind the meme was a maxim. Ryder Cups are won on Friday mornings, not Sunday evenings. And in ignoring that law, Bradley hadn't just lost the cup. He'd lost the script Azinger wrote 15 years ago. Legacy echoes. By the time the Ryder Cup's noise faded, Paul Azinger's voice remained, gravelly, defiant, and oddly prophetic. The people who put Keegan there, he said in a final interview, should have known better. It wasn't cruelty, it was closure. Azinger had lived this story before. He'd seen the system favor popularity over preparation, optics over order. Now, his "I told you so" rang less like ego and more like elegy. In the weeks that followed, his old interviews resurfaced, clips of him warning about crowd control, chemistry, even Levy integration. Fans who mocked him now flooded forums with reluctant respect. Azinger had it pegged months ago, one post read on NUCLR Golf. Even Bradley's defenders admitted the obvious. Azinger hadn't sabotaged the cup, he'd diagnosed it. Still, there was something almost tragic in his vindication. He wasn't celebrating being right, he was mourning that America still couldn't learn. The very principles that delivered Valhalla's glory in 2008 had been abandoned in the name of modernization. "We've got all the data," he mused, "and none of the soul." As 2027 loomed and the whispers began about Adair Manor, Azinger's name crept back into the conversation, not as a candidate, but as a conscience. His message was timeless: revive the pods, respect the veterans, embrace the full field, live and all. Structure over sentiment, preparation over politics. Paul Azinger may never captain again, but his fingerprints remain on every debate about the Ryder Cup's future. He is golf's eternal contrarian, its loudest truth-teller. And as long as America keeps losing, his ghost, from Valhalla to Bethpage, will keep haunting every fairway where red, white, and blue dreams collapse under their own weight. By the end, the cup was gone, the fairways empty, and the echoes of Azinger's voice louder than ever. Keegan Bradley's dream had crumbled at Bethpage, and in the rubble stood the man who saw it coming from miles away. "They should have known better," Azinger said, not with smugness, but with the weight of a prophet proven right. His lessons, about unity, about chemistry, about courage, still hung in the humid New York air, unclaimed but undeniable. And if you believe the story isn't over, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with us. Because the next Ryder Cup chapter is already being written, and you'll want to be here when the ghosts return.